So students, I would like to, introduce a very well-known ophthalmologist to you all, Dr. Pradeep Seth. He is a very well-known ophthalmologist. He has done his MBBS and MS from the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. He has his own organization called Netra, the Eye Hospital. Sir has contributed so much in ophthalmology field, developed and maintained Rinki Foundation Eye Hospital, started first automated Primatry service in Vadodara, contributed to development of eye-banking and cornea grafting service and introduced preschool vision screening in 35 schools around Vadodara by training teachers of the school to do the screening. Sir, I welcome you to our platform. And students, I hope you know me as of now. I am Puja, the Faculty Relationship Manager of Moksha Academy, and definitely your host as well. So, thank you, sir. First of all, on the very short notice, you are present here with us. So, let me just quickly give you a gist of today's session. So, the students
Sure.
who we have today here with us have recently appeared undergraduate NEET examinations, right? And they are all aspiring to become MBBS physicians, either in India or in abroad. What we are
Mm-hmm.
doing right now is like we are running a PG career series for them by introducing every specialization and giving them a roadmap, like by sharing the actual lifestyle and career journey with the content you share, like your success journey with our aspiring students. So, the very first and the basic question I have for you, like, what made you choose, to take your career as a MBBS physician?
Okay, so this is something that I did not choose. It was basically a call from within, right in my school years. Um, uh, Even in the primary school, I always aspired to be a doctor. I wanted to serve the humanity. As I progressed in the upper standards of the school, knew that I started liking biology more than mathematics. And by the time that in our times, it was not the 12th, we were doing up to 11th. 11th was the board at that time. And by then, I was pretty sure that I want to go into medicine. So it came in as a call.
Okay, so I appreciate your answer. So the second and the important question we have for you is like, why did you choose ophthalmology as your specialization?
Yeah, so this is an interesting development in my career development, in the sense that, as an undergraduate medical MBBS student, um, like the present students also must have experienced, more emphasis is on the major branches like medicine, surgery, OBGYN, pediatrics, orthopedics, etc. Um, Ophthalmology, ENT, they are considered to be psychiatry, they were considered to be minor branches. So there was very little exposure actually. And I wanted to become a surgeon. And it was more general surgery that attracted me. Surgery itself attracted me, but general surgery kind of was my first choice by the time I was appearing for interviews. And as luck would have it, I just fell a little short of getting a seat by a few marks, um, and therefore could not get a seat in general surgery in the first counseling. And for then, I decided to take up ophthalmology for 6 months. After 6 months, we'll have another counseling. And by then, I was sure I would be getting into general surgery. In these first 6 months of my residency in ophthalmology, it just happened that I attended a very prestigious meeting at that time. I'm in Gujarat, and two stalwarts in Gujarat, Dr. P.N. Nagpal and Dr. Anil Bavishi, they were year after year organizing an international level meeting at Ahmedabad. And I happened to attend that first meeting. I mean, that meeting in my first 6 months. And it was only then that I realized what ophthalmology really was. I really did not know what it, meant other than cataract and some refractive errors and things like that. But the real idea of ophthalmology came to me during that meeting of 2 days. And it was then that I decided that I want to do this ophthalmology. Technically very challenging, very interesting, and a finer surgical branch. So after the, first 6 months when we had another counseling, as I said, I was getting a seat in general surgery, but I decided to stay put in ophthalmology, and that's how I am an ophthalmologist now.
Definitely, it's what I would suggest each one of you is like you, everyone can have to make their own individual choices, and as Sir made. So, definitely, I guess surgery is also an amazing specialization, and it's definitely an individual's choice. So, sir, like if we talk about the 24-hour of a day, like what is your daily routine, roles, and responsibility as a specialist?
All right. So see, I am a single doctor establishment. My hospital, the Netra, the eye hospital. I am the only doctor there. It's a private enterprise, and my day typically gets the professional part of it gets divided into um, multiple roles. Actually, it is being a doctor and uh, delivering eye care, the medical and the surgical part of it, being the administrator of this clinic. In these days you have number of compliances, number of regulations that govern you, so you have to keep an eye on that. Of course you take help of people, but even then you are the person where the buck stops. So administration, finance, um, uh, uh, then there is this public relations or professional or relations with colleagues. Then there is keeping up with the ophthalmic science as it evolves. Like almost close to 40 years that I'll be working now, there have been no 1 or 2 years continuously where I've done anything the same way. It has been changing all along. So it's reading, it is interacting, it is attending conferences, it is actually going to workshops to learn new techniques, because learning is in the college years, and once you are into practice you don't get that time or those slots, and you are no more a student formally, but you still are a student because you need to learn the new things that are coming up. So you need to take a break, go to workshops, learn from the people who are masters in each respective skill. So these are the various assignments professionally that I have to take care almost on a daily basis. Like attending conferences certainly is not a daily thing, but reading journals, looking at scientific publications, um, those things are almost a daily thing, a real time thing, more or less. Sometimes it is that you are seeing a patient and it's a very occasional clinical situation, and right then you want to know what is the current science now. So I'll make the patient wait outside for a few minutes, look at the net resources. Is there anything different than what I understand, or is there? And then call the patient back and advise accordingly. So the whole day basically is divided into these different aspects of the same professional responsibilities. I'm not talking of the family and the other social activities that are there. As you mentioned, I am also a trustee of a family trust. I also undertake some, I have been an active member of organizations like the Indian Medical Association, Baroda Management Association. So you have meetings, you have con calls, you have decisions to take. Those things are also there, but I'm not mentioning them. I mainly highlighted the professional aspects of my daily routine.
Definitely, sir, definitely. So that is basically the definitely your specialization, your patients are your priority. I understand. So like in terms of memorable cases, like every doctor or every specialization specialty doctor, what we call, have their memorable case. So if you had like if you have faced any challenge with the patient, a challenging or a happy experience maybe, if you would like to share with us.
Yes, so I mean, whenever we are talking of a challenging situation, this is one patient that I can never forget in my life. Maybe I was around 35 years old at that time. I am a trained retinal surgeon. After my ophthalmic post-graduation, I trained into retinal surgery. Um, and so I was practicing retina as well. And this old gentleman, some 70 plus, um, came to me, and he was already blind in one eye because of a retinal detachment for many years. And now this was his second eye for which he had come to me, and he had started developing an early cataract in that eye. So retinal detachment, is a thing which, if it's there if it occurred in one eye, the risk is always very high in the other eye. And so, with his only seeing eye, he had that risk, and I looked at his retina, and I did find a hole which needed closure. Typically, retinal holes are the beginning event of a retinal detachment. So when I found a hole, I told him that we need to close this hole because we don't want your retina to detach. He agreed, and we took him on table to close that hole with cryo at that time. And as I was doing the cryo, to my horror, I saw the retina detach right then on table while I was actually, doing something to prevent this very thing. Um, Now, this was a situation which was a nightmare. It was his only eye, and now he's getting into a blinding um, complication, detachment of retina. So my mind raced. What should we be doing? The retina actually had started detaching right there. Um, we told our staff to prepare for detachment surgery, change the whole course of our activity. It needs an altogether a different set of instrumentation, time, anesthesiologist, everything. We made arrangements for all that. And I started doing the detachment surgery instead of closing the hole only. So when I started undertaking a detachment surgery, one aspect of uh, uh, or the one step of the detachment surgery is to drain the subretinal fluid. And to do that, I made a puncture in the sclera and the choroid to go beneath the choroid, between the choroid and the retina, to drain the fluid out. But because I had applied cryo at, the area around to close that hole, this whole area, even the adjacent area, became very, very vascular. And with every puncture, it would just bleed. And the bleed was, he was an old person, so um, he was a little hypertensive. His blood vessels also, by virtue of aging, were atherosclerotic, etc. So this bleed, actually, there was a pool of blood that went under the retina and went and settled at the macula. Everything was going wrong. I persisted. did whatever I had to do as a part of the retinal detachment surgery, put a buckle, drain the fluid, but then there was this blood beneath his macula. And at the conclusion of surgery, the next day, I knew that he's not going to see that well. Of course, he was seeing, but it would not be the central good vision that he came with. Now, how do you explain a patient who came to you seeing and is now seeing less because now he has blood under his macula? I told him the whole thing. Transparency is one of the guiding principles of my clinic. I told him exactly what happened. I told him that, this was something that nobody has witnessed ever during my training, either in my practice, nor I heard any of my colleagues facing a similar thing. We did whatever best we could do, and this blood is slowly going to get absorbed. And as it absorbs, you are going to see better. The retina was in place, detachment was in place. The detachment, the retina was reappositioned in its place. The only problem was that blood that would be there for a long time. So it was after 6 months to 1 year that his blood slowly got absorbed. And he regained his vision back and then never lost it till he died. I had to, always be on the edge for that whole year till I saw him recover his vision back. So on one hand, you have the power of science. On the other hand, you know that you are not the master. And this case, as you would appreciate, I went through so many sleepless nights, but at the end, was satisfied that whatever happened for good.
Definitely, sir. I understand that 1 year would have been really difficult for you. And as कहते हैं ना कि दवाई के साथ दुआ भी काम आती है. So definitely, I totally understand this thing. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing your experience. It would be really, appreciable from student side. So, like the
Yes.
next question from my side would be, with your busy schedule, like as you discussed earlier, like how do you manage your time with your family? Like, it is very specialized field. So, how do you manage your weekends with work and family? And as you are a trustee, even, and when do you start your day? How do you end your weekends and day? How do you end your day? So, if you can just share about your time management schedule.
Yes. So one thing that I knew when I started my practice was that I should be in control of my time. Nothing else should control my time. And then I just told you about what the professional duties were. All of you know what the domestic duties are. I am a father, I am a husband. I was a son for a long time. My parents lived with me till they passed away. So those responsibilities are also there. So I had decided that I'll be only seeing by appointments. There'll be no kind of open door walk-in system at my clinic. And that was from day one till today. So I will decide on a particular day how many patients I will see, how many hours I will work. And that would depend again on, what other things are there for me to do. So if the need be, in Gujarat, we have pattern of having 2 times consultation. One is in the morning hours, the first half of the day. The other is in the evening hours, the second half of the day. So some days, whenever there is something else to do, we will not give appointments for either half of the day, depending on what we are supposed to do. So say, for example, if I want to go and attend a workshop, those 1 or 2 days I'll not be working at the clinic. Or if there is some illness to be attended to, a family member, a kid or parent or something, again, those many hours I'll not be working. So this pattern, and I would kind of ascribe my day to all those things that I'm supposed to do dynamically on a daily basis. Some of those things would be kind of, for example, if there's a conference for 4 days in All India Ophthalmological Society annual meeting, which typically is for 4 days, then well in advance, or if I have to take a vacation, then well in advance, I'll stop doing surgeries so that follow-ups are not needed, the patients are not left in a lurch. I tried earlier some locum, some asking somebody to look up, but I realized that that was not in the best interest of the people, because the person who would come to attend would not be knowing each small thing of that case. And there might be a slip between the cup and the lip, and therefore I always thought that I'll do less work, but I'll do it fully myself. So an ophthalmology typically, is a branch which is not kind of very emergency intensive. There are not many midnight awakenings you have. There are occasionally, there are injuries, and in festive seasons like the Diwali and the Holi, and you get, those kind of injuries. But by and large, most of the days, you're not really disturbed at night. So it's a pretty predictable, working schedule that you can manage. And for me, to balance my work, my life, my hobbies, my other interests, my other engagements that I have been into for a long time, I would have a different time bucket for each of those things, and have been able to successfully, deal with it all along. If that answers your question.
Definitely, sir. This is what even I think, right? Like you should, you should know, and you should be the one with the time management skills. Definitely. So my next question for you is, like these students would be completing their MBBS in the next 5 years. So what do you think, like how is your specialty prospect in India or abroad in the next 10 years? Like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay. So, if you're talking of the scope of the specialty, this is a kind of a day-to-day requirements, and the ophthalmologist's number is still less in the country. So the scope is certainly very much there. We are still not, achieved the statistics of so many doctors per lakh of population or whatever. So each ophthalmologist is going to get sufficient work for many more years, not just 10 years. The only issue is the rural-urban disparity. So while, the large part of the population lives in the mofussil areas, the rural areas, the peripheral areas, the district places, most of the doctors want to be in the urban centers. And this is where the issue begins, because then they have, in cities, you have more doctors than what are needed. And in just periphery beyond 10 kilometers of any particular city, the doctors are not there. So what I would feel is that from the career point of view, from the practice point of view, it would be a prudent strategy to think of going into tier 2, tier 3 cities and towns. It would be prudent to have small clinics, which just maybe outdoors also, to go and visit once in a week or something, where there are underserved areas, and there are a lot many of them, whichever state you pick up, whichever state you come from or you would like to settle in. And even if you are in a city, you should, think of settling in the developed or the upcoming areas where the population growth is very rapid. In any urban landscape you look at, the periphery, there is a ring road, and there is another ring road, and then there is a third ring road that keeps coming. And so if you go a little beyond the actual dense population, then as you grow, the population also grows. And I think that's a good strategy to assure yourself of sufficient work to go by. The prospect is always there.
Okay, definitely that answers the question. So I have the next question for you, and
One more thing, sorry, Pooja, just a minute,
yeah,
because you also asked about abroad, and I think I probably, left that part out. Um, See, abroad, what I have known is that there was this road, ROAD. This students must be knowing about it. They must have heard about it. So that has become very popular. Road is R is radiology, O is ophthalmology, A is anesthesiology, and D is dermatology. So these are kind of hotcake choices of the people abroad. And this is more because of the work-life balance, ease, and convenience. Because most of these branches are non-emergency. And surprisingly, what is added is an E road now. And E is actually emergency medicine. While it is emergency medicine, people still like it because it is not an individual thing. It's a hospital matrix, and you have a duty. So 8 hours, whatever, and then you are free. So time is very much within your control. You are busy for those 8 hours while you are on duty. So this E has been added to the road, and it has become an E road. For students from our country who might want to go abroad, I have known that it's not very easy to get into ophthalmology into residency, especially if you are going through the USMLE. However, if you have been a part of their undergrad studies also, then probably that doesn't apply to you. And um, while it is hard, it's still not impossible. One can always give a try. But ophthalmology, as I understand, is not something that many people are able to get after the USMLE. So that's one thing that you need to realize.
okay, thank you so much, sir. So
Yeah.
the next question as I have for you is, like medicine is a field which has research and new happenings in every now and then. So what are the new fields or research happening in your specialty?
All right. So, I'll answer the question in a little different way. When I graduated, when I became a MBBS, I was also into that uh, um, looking for what should be my next course. Should I be doing post graduation? Should I be, I was always interested in community practice. I was also interested in rural services. As a medical student, I had brought up 2 or 3 outreach programs as a student in a voluntary manner. So, I mean, those were some of the thoughts coming to my mind at that time, going to underserved areas and things like that. So, I went to one of the first interview that I gave in a tier 3 town was taken by a person who was an ophthalmologist and an ENT surgeon both. So he was DO, DLO. And I was wondering that how can a person be an ophthalmologist as well as an ENT surgeon? Because by the time I trained, I knew ophthalmology was a different subject and ENT was a different subject. But here this man was my interviewer, a doctor and the superintendent of that particular hospital, who was a DO, DLO. As I did my MS in ophthalmology, by then slowly, this subspecialty or super specialty, as you call it, had started. So people were doing retinal surgery. Some of them were doing cornea. So these were the initial 2 offshoots of ophthalmology which started being looked upon as a subspecialty or a super specialty, if you want to call it. Why? Because a lot of information and knowledge was gathering into it. And how was that happening? Because there was a lot of research happening across the world. Of course, in our country, we did not have at that time, I'm talking 40 years ago, the luxury of such a research. But the world over, the research was, very fast. And lo and behold, within the next decade, we had how many subspecialties? We had strabismology, we had pediatric ophthalmology, we had neuro-ophthalmology, we had refractive surgery, the LASIK and stuff. Cataract itself became a super specialty. There are people now who just do cataracts and do nothing else. Oculoplasty, ocular immunology, and uveitis. I mean, these are the offshoots of ophthalmology as subspecialties now. Immense amount of knowledge, immense amount of research happening the world over. Is India participating? Yes. Now, for the last maybe a decade or two, there have been fantastic institutes which have come up in India. You might have heard about the Arvind Eye Care System. You might have heard about Shankar Netralaya, the LV Prasad Eye Hospital, and many such places, which have really become, centers of excellence. The RP Center of Ophthalmic Sciences at New Delhi. And now you have AIIMS coming up in many states, many places you must have heard. Our present Prime Minister really wants that we should get into research. Our COVID vaccines are a testimony to that. And the question that has been put to me is that what are those fields of research happening? There are a lot of them. But serious research, we still have to have a lot of funding. We still have to have that scientific temper to get into proper data, to get into proper analysis, to get into proper conduction of trials and stuff. But I think I am talking to the upcoming bundles of energy, and you all will find it a much better platform to begin a research if you have to, and if you wish to, in multiple areas in ophthalmology. So there are so many questions which yet need to be answered. Medicine put together as a whole, we still know only the tip of the iceberg. The large chunk is still beneath the water surface. So take a dip and you will get anything and everything that interests you to get into.
That is what I, exactly what is I mean, that one should get into what they actually want to. So, sir,
Yes.
definitely my next question is related to that only. Like there was a point of time in your life where you chose to ophthalmology rather than surgery. So, like,
Yes.
why should young doctors pick up your specialty?
Okay. So, ophthalmology, first of all, is a very fascinating uh, field to me. Why? Because, vision is something that is treasured even more than life. As you go through the actual clinical work, people will tell you that it's okay if I die, but it's not okay if I lose my sight. So I was very much fascinated. In fact, as an undergraduate at your levels or the levels of the students that are probably listening to this chat, as I said, I had hardly any idea of ophthalmology. Even the anatomy, the physiology, ophthalmic anatomy and ophthalmic physiology are so complicated and complex things that I started realizing when I actually went into ophthalmology. And so those people who like surgery, those people who probably would like to kind of, not be too much um, facing time unpredictability, those people who um, are kind of type A. Type A, you understand if you have gone through psychiatry, that they are perfectionists. They look for, every small cell, because ophthalmology is trying to now pass sutures between the cells. So, or pass a laser beam between the cells. So, um, people who have, there is something like an ophthalmic temperament, it's called. Ophthalmologists, I am a very difficult client for people like, the builders, and because I see the plumb line going out just looking at that, because of the proportions that I have been accustomed to examine. If there is something not in order, it comes to my sight even from the remote corner of my glance. So they don't like me, आप तो बहुत कच-कच करते हो. You are finding so small faults. So that is the ophthalmic personality. You really have to find small faults in ophthalmology to be able to be, successful in treating the problems of a patient. So why should young doctors pick up my specialty? It's a clean, it's a uh, um, beautiful science with a lot of challenges, um, and something that you can challenge yourself skill wise, learning different techniques, and coming up with your own options of different techniques. That has always thrilled me, it has challenged me. And there are many things I do differently in my surgical practice than what is the book understanding. So, I mean, these are some of the reasons I thought it was exciting. And it is possible for you to kind of, put up a practice. It is possible for you to get employed. Ophthalmology, if you're at least prepared to go a little away from main cities. And these days, to tell you, government has equipped many of the peripheral places also with very good equipments, unlike our times. During our times, there was hardly anything. Even the slit lamps were not there. So, but now you have so many instruments. There is a, there was a program which ran for 20 years called Vision 2020. That uh, goal has already been surpassed now. But in an attempt to reduce the preventable blindness and to deal with the curable blindness, government has put in a lot of resources. Many centers are very well equipped. So I believe that there's a good scope for young doctors to, uh, uh, get into this particular field. But as I said, you should be a little ready to go away from main cities.
Hope students, this answer was very much valuable for you as well. So sir, the next question, as you can see on screen, we have is like, if a particular student wants to choose your specialization, so what are the subjects, important subjects, what we call in MBBS curriculum, to become specialist in your field?
Yeah, so well, you really cannot pick up a few which are more important and the others that are less important, because medicine is an interconnected human body system. So it is very necessary that you need to have a good idea of most of the other non-clinical as well as clinical subjects. But if you still have to answer this question with a more emphasis on topics or subjects, I will mention four of them. I will say that pharmacology and pathology basics will always be needed for you to understand the diseases of the eye and the management of the eye. So be as good as you can be in these two. Anatomy, physiology, you will have to learn separately because ophthalmic anatomy and ophthalmic physiology are really not a significant part of the undergrad curriculum, and there is a lot to it that you will learn if you go into it. The other two subjects that I would mention is one of them is um, the biostatistics and epidemiology. You must really know how to handle data, manage data. We were talking of research just a while ago. And what happens is that if you have no good idea, then you are really, once you get into practice, you really don't know how you would conduct your even mini researches in your own work, which you can do actually if you know this biostatistics. So that is one field which you must be aware of. And the fourth field is medical jurisprudence, which is the medical legal aspects, because this is one thing that people are very ill-equipped when they get into practice. And like, ophthalmology, as I told you, going blind makes people very angry, even more than dying. And so there can be number of legal issues that come up, and how do you handle them and how do you deal with them. So you better understand medical jurisprudence, and you better understand biostatistics. So these are the four topics. I think while you are a student, you have the time and you have the hand holding of your professors and teachers in your school, and you should make the maximum out of that.
Yeah, great. So, students, I guess you got the correct answer for this question. So, who want to pursue their career in ophthalmologist, so as an ophthalmologist, so they can definitely focus on these four subjects. So, sir, like I would like to know what is your success mantra, and what would what's your message for aspiring physicians who we have today with us?
Okay, so let me confess that I am a very small man to give any message like this to this powerhouses or this bundle of energies that I'm talking to. But still, to answer your question, I would like to share the thoughts of great person uh, like Dr. Robert Hutchison, Sir Robert Hutchison. You must have known his name. And he said, and I quote, I'm very inspired by his saying, which goes as this, as I quote. Um, he says, "Don't try to aim too high in medical profession." That is what he means. Don't try to aim too high. There are not many prizes in our profession, and all that high aims are not going to make you that happy. Are you seeking big things? Seek them not. If you are able to meet with your needs, if you are able to put aside a little for your old age, and at the same time, if you are able to garner and get the respect of your colleagues and the love of your patients, you have done pretty much nice as a measure of success, if you want to call it a success. And this goal is reachable by most of you. Unquote. This is what Sir Robert Hutchison said. I very much endorse and agree with his views. And if there is a message you are looking for, this is a message of his that I would like to send to you?